fellow Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome back to the Falcoholic Live, episode 241. I am your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, Adnan Ikic at Ikic at Say Which Way on the Twitters. Was going into the at a little too early there. Adnan, it's been we've been on a brief hiatus here. We're back. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I was gonna say, I would hope you'd have my name down by now. I think I've been on at the very
only like
least
100 episodes at this point, right?
Yeah, at the very least, if not even more. But yeah, no, I'm doing well. I'm enjoying the summer downtime, a little bit. There's not, we're enjoying the playoffs, enjoying some Atlanta Braves baseball out here, but I don't know. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was talking about it with one of my friends. It sucks. It sucks not being in season, but I feel like this is, a bit necessary, and I think this is a debate to have with, amongst the viewers. But, you can't. I feel like it's not healthy for us to always be 24/7, always stressed out over the Falcons or over sports in general. Sure, some people are stressed over regular season Braves baseball, but you shouldn't be. There's 160 of these games, but it's this off season time, this off period time where we can just chill out a little bit and just take a breath, take it in, enjoy the moment. I feel like it's very necessary, even if we're not huge fans of it all the time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it is nice to get a little bit of a break for us because we grind from training camp in late July all the way through to basically the end of the draft in May. So we have to take advantage of our couple of months where there's just not so much going on, and it does make you more excited for the season when you're not constantly in it all the time. So I think it's going to be a welcome reprieve for 2 months, but by reprieve, we're not going to be not doing shows. We'll still be doing weekly shows. I'll probably still be doing at least one podcast a week. We may have a few weeks off here and there for vacations or other things, but we'll still be here. We'll still be talking. Maybe we'll get to some of those, random pods we've been tweezing, like the theology podcast or the politics podcast. Maybe we'll do some fun stuff when it gets into the deep dead zone. But for now, we still have a couple of major topics to discuss. One of them is the schedule release, but seeing as that was a week ago now, I figured maybe we'll just do that at a later point, maybe next week, because we do have some actual news in terms of the roster to break down here with quite a few moves. I think it was 14 or 15 moves being made just over the last couple days. Rookie minicamp is wrapped up. So I figured we would dive into some rostery stuff, some newsy stuff, and then get back to the schedule, maybe do a whole sort of very, very early predictions, go through the schedule game by game, that sort of thing. Save that, tuck that away for, after we're through OTAs or something like that. But, yeah, there's still plenty to talk about. And, again, a lot of moves made. Falcons did say goodbye to some players that I definitely thought would at least stick around through training camp. Brought in some interesting names as well, including, I think, 3 or 4 XFL players at this point, which I think was the most of any team in the NFL. So, yeah, let's dive into some stuff. Before we do, of course, want to get to today's sponsor, betonline.ag, your number one source for all your sports betting needs, including info, stats, news, and scores. You can currently get the latest odds and lines for this year's NBA playoffs. We're almost to the NBA Finals. If you're feeling, frisky on the Miami Heat, I'm sure you could get great odds on them to upset the Celtics. I mean, I don't know anything about basketball. I saw some stat where it was a 97% chance that they were going to lose. So I'm guessing the odds are probably pretty good. Yeah.
Don't listen to those ESPN stats.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't always been great for the NFL, but, no matter what you do, you can bet on it on betonline.ag, your sports intel headquarters this season, as they've got you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, including basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, golf to UFC, boxing, NFL futures, whatever you like. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. It's also on the top left if you're watching. on video to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. And we got a couple of people asking what I'm drinking. It's just vodka and grapefruit juice. I'm trying to take it a little bit easy after the last week of being in Biloxi. I think me and my buddies, I got together with all my high school buddies, and those guys know how to put away beers. So I believe we went through 120 beers. There were 8 people there, but that was that may have been a new record. So, yeah. So before we dive into the roster cuts, I did want to call attention to a particular egregious take. Maybe this will be a good summer segment. You know, we can just do like the worst take of the week or something. But I'm not even going to give the guy a shout out because it was that outlandish that I'm wondering if they were just farming for interactions. But if you've been on Twitter over the past couple of days, you've probably seen it. There was a tweet referencing a podcast where someone had said that taking Bijan Robinson at 8 would still be a bad pick, even if Bijan Robinson became a Hall of Famer. Adnan, you know, what do you think about that take?
It's egregiously stupid and ridiculous. If you take a Hall of Famer anywhere, it's a home run pick. Like, do you know how hard it is to become a Hall of Famer in the NFL? Like, so you're telling me right now, like, do you know who the Hall of Famers are? So Bijan Robinson going into the draft was compared to 2 Hall of Famers. One was LaDainian Tomlinson, and one was Marshall Faulk. And, you know, I need not even mention the resumes of both of those guys. But one of the things about it is if the Falcons are guaranteed LaDainian Tomlinson at pick 8 or Marshall Faulk, or even like, you know, someone who isn't really on that level but is still on that Hall of Fame level, like I don't know, like let's say a Terrell Davis, that would still be an amazing pick at number 8. Like, so I don't know. I'm just so sick of this like really like dumb narrative of, oh, the Falcons got a running back, so now no matter what, that pick is going to be terrible. Like, shit. I don't know. Like, are you telling me like 2008, like the Jets take Vernon Goldson at number 6? That was a premium position, defensive end. Are you saying that like wasn't a terrible pick because that was a defensive end? Or, you know, the Jags take Derek Harvey at number 8. Like, are you telling me that if the Falcons had gotten a middling are you telling me that you would be happier if the Falcons got someone like a Lucas Van Ness, who's like, you know, he's technically a pass rusher that's an in-demand position, instead of Bijan Robinson? And I mean, I get that people are upset over the Jalen Carter, like overpassing on Jalen Carter. My advice is to just get the fuck over it at this point. Like, I'm honestly really sick of just listening to Georgia fans, my fellow Georgia fans, just like complaining about, oh, the Falcons never take any Bulldogs, and, you know, the Falcons, you know, should have taken Jalen. Like, there's a reason why Carter wasn't on their board. Like, just respect the process. We don't understand. We don't get 30% of the information that these teams have, and obviously he wasn't BPA on their board. Bijan Robinson was, and I think they talked ad nauseum about Bijan Robinson as a person, about not having to really worry about any off the field issues with Bijan Robinson. You and I both really like the pick. You and I both really actually love the pick. I would have preferred Carter myself. I would have taken Carter at 8. They didn't, but I'm not going to sit here crying over it all off season and into next season. The same way that, you know, I wasn't crying over them passing on Jordan Davis last year, and, you know, lo and behold, Jordan Davis didn't really do much last season. Or Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is, and that's an egregiously like stupid ass take. Like, that's literally one of the dumbest things I've heard.
Yeah, it's just why. I mean, it's like so it's easy to dunk on because it's like I was like, this can't be real. Like, somebody can't actually think this. Like, I would say even if you take a Hall of Fame kicker, or a Hall of Fame punter, like with a top 10 pick, you're probably still happy with that. And it's like we've gone like so. Some people have gone so far down the rabbit hole of like value and perceived value and surplus value and contracts and all this, and they've like forgotten that like the ultimate goal is to just draft good to great players. And the best goal of all is to draft Hall of Fame caliber players. These are the type of players that not only shape your team and your franchise forever, they like impact NFL history in like a significant way. Like Bijan becoming a Hall of Famer probably means he's played in a Super Bowl, maybe won a Super Bowl. It also means he's probably had career longevity, which I think is a concern for most running backs, right? That they don't have the longevity. So it would probably mean that he also hit his ceiling and did everything that we had hoped for. So it's just wild to me that you would go that far with that take. Like, you know, if he was like, oh, even if Bijan's a Pro Bowler, then it would be a bad pick. Like, it's like, well, that's still probably dumb, but we did just see Tyler Huntley make a Pro Bowl. So like, okay, I guess I could like, I'm not going to be that upset, but you know.
I'm measuring it more with All Pro at this point because the Pro Bowl is just turned into a bit of a joke. But I mean, like, you know, I named two of the greatest running backs of all time, but literally, like, even less, like, prime Marshawn Lynch. Like, let's say, I think, in my opinion, Lynch should eventually be a Hall of Famer, maybe not first ballot. But if you are guaranteed a pick 8, that you will get a career that prime Marshawn Lynch had. I mean, I'm pretty sure we would have both been like, hell yeah, sign me up for that. Because Lynch was like at one point just like arguably the best running back in the league for a number of years. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like your Hall of Famers, you're talking about the likes of, you know, an Adrian Peterson, you know, a current Derrick Henry, like these guys who, like you said, they shape NFL history. And do you know how many Hall of Famers the Falcons have had in their history?
Like 1, 2. That's it, maybe.
Like if you count Deion Sanders, Falcons, which I mean, like you know, I think so, but you know,
half and half, yeah.
Yeah, it's like half and half. Like it's him, it's Claude Humphrey. You know, it's gonna be Julio will eventually. He's not yet. Tommy Nobis should be, but you know that's just Jesse Tuggle should be. Those are both like we can go a full hour about how stupid the NFL has been and how blatantly unfair, you know, the voting process has been toward, you know, Nobis especially, but Tuggle too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Falcons have had 2 Hall of Famers in their history. And you're telling me that, oh yeah, like if Bijan's a Hall of Famer, it's not worth it. Shut the fuck up. Also,
it's just stupid.
By the way, I'm drinking a 0 sugar Canada Dry ginger ale. And to answer your question, Twizzlers ice cream, it depends. Like Twizzlers flavored ice cream, sure. I would not have ice cream where Twizzlers are like you have pieces of Twizzlers in,
like a Twizzlers Blizzard or something.
Yeah, like I don't know. I wouldn't do the pieces, but I would do like a flavored one. And I mean, yeah, Matt Ryan also should be a Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah, that one. I'm worried that's not going to happen, but
yeah, I am too. Honestly,
it's just like
but
if Devontae Freeman picks up that block and that pass is completed, then the Falcons win that Super Bowl. Like one play probably would have changed. Like then he'd be in the Hall of Fame, no question, if he had that Super Bowl ring. So it's really dumb that somebody else's mistake would take that away from him. But
and Brandon, I know Tony Gonzalez and Morton Anderson are in the Hall, but Gonzalez technically, I mean, I think he's more of a Chief. Sure, like he had like his great years in Atlanta.
Give him like half a point. He gets to be like half a Falcon. Same thing with Morton. Morton's like best, like most famous play came in Atlanta, so I think you could probably count him more. But
I don't like, but like Claude Humphrey's the only dude where it's like he was like a Falcon. He was a Falcon. Like that's a no doubt, like absolutely 100% Falcon. The other guys were more so like, you know, they played in Atlanta, but most of their career was spent away from Atlanta. Well, Morton, like I don't know, like maybe half of it was in Atlanta.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Remember when we had him on the podcast? That was fun times.
That was great. I think he's come on multiple times. I think Morton. So yeah, good stuff.
Morton spent 8 years in Atlanta. Morton spent more time as a Saint than as a Falcon. Like
we don't count that. We don't count those years yet. No. But yes, it's a point. It's a good point. But if Bijan's a Hall of Famer, exactly 0 people will believe that take. I don't even think the person that sent it believes it, to be honest.
You
So.
know, Bijan into the Hall of Fame, and someone is griping, "Oh, well, we shouldn't have taken him 8th back in 2023."
But they didn't save very much on the salary cap, Adnan. They didn't save very much on the salary cap.
You know, they didn't get that defensive lineman. You know, that's what was in at the time.
Yes.
You know, who knows where the NFL is going in the next decade?
Who knows? Yeah. But there was one more take I wanted to get to, just because obviously slow news. That this one was maybe a little bit less outlandish, but I did think it was worth talking about, which was Mark Sessler, around the NFL podcast participator, also big time writer over at NFL.com, did a piece where it was like one move that he'd like to see every team make, and his move for the Falcons was he wanted Atlanta to trade for Ryan Tannehill. And that has definitely sparked a lot of, debate there. So I'm curious. I think I know where you stand on this, but I thought it was worth bringing up at least because it was an interesting topic.
Let me look up how much Ryan Tannehill makes this year. I'm sorry, I don't have.
Yeah.
I
don't have the numbers in front of me.
Contract off the top of my head, guys. I know I'm being very unprofessional right now.
Mm-hmm.
Although you can blame Kevin. He didn't give me a heads up that we were going to. So
I didn't. I just ambushed you with these. Yeah.
To pull the curtain back a little bit about the show, I never know any of what we're going to talk about going into it.
I mean, I send you it's like I write the article on the site that comes out at 5. I usually list the topics on there. You could read it if you wanted to.
I mean, I don't, but it's like,
but I don't directly send anything to you. That's true.
Yeah. But it's like, so. And honestly, I prefer it that way. Like, I like it this way because I like not having a rigid, schedule of, all right, we have to talk about this. We have to give this much time to this. Like, both ways, I understand. I like our way better because it's like water. It's like more free-flowing. You and I can, start talking about this. Then we can get on a tangent about, anything else. Whereas, before, when I've been on other podcasts and when I've been on other shows, it's like, I get this list of, all right, we're going to start with this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. And that's fine. That keeps it organized. That keeps it structured. But, we don't do it here. So I had no idea we were going to be talking about Tannehill. But, he's a $36 million cap hit. The Falcons would have to pay his base salary and I think his restructure, right? The restructure would fall under the trading team?
No.
Or is that it?
So all of the prorated bonus money so the Falcons would be on the hook for $27 million. That's what they take away.
So it would just be the $27 million. The Titans take his prorated, they take his signing bonus.
They take all the restructure and signing bonus,
Yeah, so the Falcons don't have $27 million to burn. I think the Falcons, after signing the draft class, how much are the Falcons out right now? Less than 10,
something like that. Yeah.
The only feasible scenario where I can even see that being a possibility with Tannehill, and this is his last year, is if the Titans agree to pay off a significant amount of his money, and if they take back a 6th rounder in compensation, then it's all right, we can have a conversation. The conversation can't even. It won't even get to a conversation unless the Titans are eating $20 million of that at the very least, if not more.
Yeah. The Falcons could restructure a bunch of deals and things like that, but I don't really think they're inclined to do that. Yeah. So it doesn't really make any financial sense, like Adnan's saying. I don't think it makes any roster sense either. I think that there was, a pathway for Tannehill to end up here in Atlanta. I think that was something that we talked about earlier in the process, but it would have had to have been with the Titans cutting him. And if the Titans had cut him, I think they would have loved to have him as the Taylor Heineke here, pay him, $8 million or whatever, to be the backup who could start in a pinch if things went wrong or if there was an injury. I think that would have been something that they liked because they know Tannehill knows the system really well and is, that sort of thing. But they would never have traded for Tannehill. I don't think anyone would trade for Tannehill. Not that Tannehill's bad, but $27 million is way too much for anyone to take on at this point. So I think the Titans are basically praying for somebody to have a desperate quarterback need pop up. most likely due to injury, right? Not that they're praying for someone to get injured, but like that they're hoping for an opportunity to trade him. But I don't think it's going to happen.
I will say, I think if if that scenario did happen and they ended up with Tannehill instead of Heineke, I think there would have been a bigger chance of Tannehill overtaking that starting job in training camp. Just because I don't think, like, I can see a world, I can picture a world where Arthur Smith wanted to bring in Tannehill to really ride with it this year because he has the veteran presence. He knows that system in and out. But that's a moot conversation at this point because the Falcons are not trading for him. They're not cutting him.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be on the hook for $9.5 million dead cap next year with Tannehill off the roster. Like
Yes.
they've really like squeezed as much out of that rock as they could. And the Falcons, there's a reason why the Falcons have not wanted to restructure anything. Like, have you noticed, like, the Falcons have not made any restructures? Like, Jake Matthews' contract is the same. Grady Jarrett's contract is the same. This is one of those things where I think they really enjoyed having that cap flexibility this year. And next year, they'll have even more. Like, if you thought free agency was fun this season, just wait for next season. Like, they're going to have even more money after cuts are made and after roster moves get made. And they'll be even bigger players in next year's market than they were this year. Like it's going to be a fun few off seasons to be a Falcons fan for sure. And I think they really valued that, and I think they would restructure if it's really like an impact player, if it's for the right piece. Like I can see a possible restructure happening right now for maybe a Yannick Ngakoue if they decide, all right, we want to go out there. I don't think it'll happen because their pass rush. Not saying Ngakoue wouldn't be the best pass rusher on the team, but I think they've invested a lot into it to the point where I don't think that they would be willing to make that move and pay Ngakoue all that money to have him as just another option. But just an impact player of that caliber or better, like I can see it happening, but Ryan Tannehill isn't that.
Yeah, no, it would be really dicey to squeeze in someone that expensive, especially when and this will get into our larger roster conversation that we're going to have, that they're honestly like pretty stacked on the edge, like to where I'm not really sure that they can accommodate another player on the roster without cutting like somebody they're paying money to or somebody they drafted in the second, like on day 2 over the last couple of years. Like right now I would have like, I don't know, I would say they have like 7 edge rushers or something like that on the roster, and I think they probably have to keep 6. Like now, they probably have to keep 6 unless they want to cut D'Angelo Malone or Zach Harrison or Lorenzo Carter, all these guys that have guaranteed money. So, you think maybe Bud Dupree's the most expendable, but his base salary is almost entirely guaranteed, almost $3 million. So it doesn't really seem like they're likely to do that. I mean, if they have someone else just ball out, then of course they might, but they're already in a situation where they don't really have room there. So it doesn't seem particularly likely that we'll get another big move there, but they do still have that sort of last thing that they can do, right? They can tap into the restructures if for some reason they need to make a big move, whether for injury reasons or otherwise. So that does lead us like naturally into our sort of like roster conversation and these most recent moves. I'm sure you've seen them by now. Adnan, that the Falcons, I think that was like 15 cuts versus 15 total moves, 7 or 8 cuts, 7 or 8 restructures. The Falcons really making a lot of shuffle type stuff. I wasn't necessarily expecting a ton of moves after rookie minicamp. There's always a few, but to get that many was pretty crazy. And they did do, I think, another one. They added a quarterback as well, 4th quarterback, which was pretty surprising. But let's start it off with the guys they let go of. The big headliner obviously was Germain Ifedi, who was the swing tackle last year, was sort of someone I had penciled in as the swing tackle. What do you think about them moving on from Ifedi? Because now I don't really know that there's an established swing tackle on the roster at all.
Yeah, no, that was shocking. Like, I did not expect Ifedi to be a starter by any means. But this is a guy with first round pedigree, someone who has experience in the system, but he now ends up being a kind of shocking. Like, he wasn't really saving that much money from moving on from him, which probably indicates that maybe it wasn't just all the on the field stuff like that was an issue. Maybe there was some stuff there behind the scenes. I'm not going to really speculate on any of that, but no, that was a really shocking move to me, because Ifedi was a fine swing tackle. Like, he was a fine guy to be able to put in there, if you do get into a pinch. And now the roster is lacking that. I'm sure the team will look for someone who possibly gets cut after training camp, after free agency, or excuse me, after training camp, after the preseason. Like, I think they will be on high alert for a potential veteran tackle to join the ranks. And we saw that this team is not afraid to bring someone in the middle of training camp and to have them not only compete for, but to win a job. We saw it with Michael Pruitt last year. He was, an Arthur Smith guy in Tennessee, and he was brought in, I think after the first preseason game, if my memory serves correctly.
Yeah.
And he ended up being the second tight end on the roster, and down the stretch, he ended up being Desmond Ritter's go-to option, low key, with Kyle Pitts injured. But yeah, I can definitely. I definitely do expect them to go into the regular season with a more established veteran tackle presence behind McGarry and Jake Matthews than what's on the roster today. But the Ifedi move did, that did come as a bit of a shock for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It was shocking to me just because they didn't really have another option. I think it signals that they probably do like the other. This is like rumors, right? So I don't want to say it's substantiated, but there were rumors that Ifedi was someone that was kind of difficult to get along with. That there may have been some like a difficult personality there, which it's odd to me. Like Jermaine Ifedi, you look at his PFF grades his entire career, he's always been a solid starter at tackle, and those guys typically get paid at least $4 to $5 million to be swing tackles at the very least. And this is a guy that started a ton of games. It's only a little bit older than Caleb McGarry. But he was forced to take a vet minimum deal to return to Atlanta last year, or like this offseason. The Falcons basically waited a couple weeks to re-sign him. He didn't get a better deal, so they brought him back. But so I wonder if it's personality related. I don't know. But maybe the Falcons were like, we're done dealing with that. Or maybe they just really like the guys they have. We did see Josh Miles come in, who was a guy that was, I think, a UDFA or a late round pick that has gotten some snaps here and there. It's graded out well. Now had a few years under his belt in the NFL. Maybe they like that. Ethan Greenidge, former Saint swing tackle guy who just never was able to break through. They have him. They have a couple of UDFA types. Tyler Vrabel from last year. Maybe they like how he's progressed. And they did sign the the XFL tackle Barry Wesley, who I don't know much about. I don't know if anybody watched him play in the XFL, but they did sign him along with a lot of other XFL players also. But that was definitely the most sort of eyebrow raising move was moving on from Ifedi. But I think you're right there, like that they may just sort of monitor that, like let these guys compete, and then if a swing tackle they like sort of shakes loose at the end of training camp or in the preseason, they may just scoop him up and go from there if one of these guys doesn't sort of take over the job.
I'm not saying that it is like that the rumors are correct, that it was anything off the field. If they are, and I think I mentioned this in our Falcoholic Discord, it always brings me back to one of my favorite quotes from the Falcons season in Hard Knocks, back when it was Brian Cox who was the star of that entire season. Let's be honest. Yeah. You're not good enough to be an asshole. Or maybe that was Keith Armstrong who said that.
It was one of them though. Yeah, Brian Cox had some bangers too. But
well, I think it was Keith Armstrong. It was Armstrong in that episode where he it opened up with him absolutely chewing out the special teams unit. That was some great television. But yeah, it's some guys are good enough to be assholes, like for sure. Like I'm not saying that they are, but let's say let's say that Grady Jarrett, it's found out that he's difficult to work with. All right, too fucking bad. It's Grady Jarrett.
Yeah, he's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like the swing tackle. If it is true, like you know,
Yeah.
you should be on your best behavior.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we did get a donation here from Scat.
And
Oh
I
yeah, go
am
ahead. Go
saying,
ahead. Yeah.
from what I hear, Grady Jarrett is absolutely
He's
lovely
lovely.
to work.
Yeah,
I,
he's lovely.
I did not like. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, like Adnan said that Grady Jarrett is hard to work. No, like Grady
No.
Jarrett is like fantastic. I was just using that as
We're just gonna clip that off and yeah.
yeah, how good of a player Grady Jarrett is
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
point where if he was an asshole, he can be
Yeah.
one. He's good.
Yep. But yeah, did get a $10 donation from Scat. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate that. All right. He says Colin Cowherd said recently that Frank Reich is the best coach in the NFC South. Personally, I was outraged. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's pretty bold considering Frank Reich just got fired. Now I don't think that was really Frank Reich's fault, but I mean, he doesn't have a ton of competition, right? I mean, like we're obviously high on Arthur Smith, but the Falcons haven't had a winning record yet. So I think it's probably a little early to anoint Arthur Smith, I think. And then obviously the Saints with Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen is a hard coach to really put on a pedestal because he hasn't really had any success as a head coach ever. And then the Buccaneers are going through just a gigantic mess. So they're not really. So it was probably going to be Arthur Smith or Frank Reich. Frank Reich obviously has the history on his side of being a good head coach. So I guess I'm not like outraged. But I do think like Arthur Smith, if the Falcons actually do put it together this year and win, then Arthur Smith will probably be clearly the best coach in the NFC South. But I guess I wouldn't be that upset. But what do you think, Adnan?
I mean, honestly, it's like one of those things where it's Colin Cowherd, it's the national media. Like they're never
It's
really
also
gonna,
Cowherd, yeah.
they're never really gonna give the Falcons, the respect, that they sort of deserve until they prove that they deserve it. Like we personally think that Arthur Smith is the best coach in the NFC South, like without a doubt. But it's one of those things where he's someone coming from the national media. I think that Arthur Smith, what he did with the rosters from the Falcons the past couple of years has been impressive as hell, even getting 7 wins out of that. But they're not looking at it like that. Like, guys like Cowherd, guys in the national media, they're just looking at it as, oh, Arthur Smith is, 14-20 as a head coach in his NFL career. I'm not too terribly upset that he ranked Frank Reich as number one, just because Reich, sure, he did just get fired, but he does have a history of like pretty good success, especially compared to the competition. Like Todd Bowles has had 5 seasons as a head coach in his career, 4 with the Jets, 1 with the Bucks. I'm not counting that year where he was the interim with Miami. He has 1 winning season. He had that first year in New York, he was 10-6, and he still missed the playoffs that year. Dennis Allen has been a fucking garbage fire as a head coach in his NFL career. Like, I have no idea what the Saints are thinking, even bringing him back. He went 4-12, 4-12, and then 0-4 with the Raiders before last year going 7-10 with the Saints. Reich is the only person in the division who has multiple winning seasons under his belt. He has multiple. He's the only one that has a playoff appearance, other than Bowles last year, who made it as an under 500 team. Reich was a hell of a coach in Indianapolis for a while there. I do think that he did like. He got the short end of the straw, a little bit with the Colts this last season. I don't think that was all completely his fault. But he was really good. He was really good with the Colts. He couldn't really win a playoff game. He had a couple chances, but he had 3 winning seasons, in 5 years. And I think he's a great play caller. I think Frank Reich, he would definitely be my pick for the second best coach, in my biased opinion in the division. So I don't really have too much of an issue with Reich being ranked as the top coach in the division.
Yeah, I do think that the Panthers have assembled a really good coaching staff. I think that was one of the most impressive things they did this offseason. I just don't think we're going to see it really translate to wins this year. I mean, they traded so much away for Bryce Young, and obviously rookie quarterback, and that receiving core is bad. So it's we're probably not. It's not going to really translate this year, but I do think the Panthers are going to get better, and I do like that coaching staff as a whole. But yeah, I'm not. I see where you're going there, Scat. Like, I mean, I think Arthur Smith probably should be considered the best coach so far, but it's just like we haven't really. We've like followed everything closely, and we sort of know like, oh well, Arthur Smith has basically like squeezed blood out of a turnip to get this offense to being, functional with basically nothing out there except for a couple first round picks. That's it. So it's I guess I'm not mad yet, but I would be mad if like Arthur Smith wins the division and then they're still like, well, Frank Reich's still a better coach, after this season. So we'll see. But I do think the Falcons have a great opportunity to sort of prove everybody wrong there. Let me read off some of the other. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say like the respect will come, when this season, and the respect will definitely come. Like, I know that there was a lot of gripes over, and I know we'll talk about the schedule at another time, but the Falcons don't have a single nationally televised game on the schedule this season. Win the division, win 10 games this year, win the NFC South. I promise you'll get at least 2 or 3 nationally televised games next year. Win 10 games, I promise Arthur Smith will be talked about as one of the better head coaches in the NFL. Now it is ridiculous that the Packers got 6. Like they're not deserving of like 6 nationally televised games. Like I am salty that I now have to watch Jordan Love 6 times in prime time. That's just going to be terrible viewing. Yeah. But it is like, I love Arthur Smith's answer to that when he was asked about it. He said, you sort of just, we're going to go out there and try and earn it. Like you sort of have to go out there and earn that respect, earn those nationally televised games. I promise you, if the Falcons this season go 11-6, win the NFC South, maybe even win a playoff game, the talk from the national media next offseason will be a lot more glistening and a lot more positive. We are here to, sort of tell you, or to do our best to try and tell you what's going to happen. We're trying to be proactive with the Falcons. We're trying to be, as objective as possible, as hard as that may be. But, we follow this team very closely. And, it's the same for the sort of beats and the sort of dedicated fan pages, dedicated websites to each of these teams. The national media looks at it more reactively. The national media talks about, what have you proven? What have you done? Whereas we're looking at it like, all right, here's what the data is. We're close enough to this team. We've watched every snap. We sort of have a better idea to tell you what's probably going to happen. But, that's, I understand. It's harder for the national media because you have 32 teams to account for instead of 1. It's a lot easier for us to just be focused on just the Falcons.
Yeah, we have a lot more intel. And, like, we're not just, like, crazy homers either. Like, some of you may have joined the show this offseason, so this is the first, like, record predictions you're seeing us make. Or, we're talking about the Falcons potentially being a winning team this year when everyone has counted them out. Last year, I predicted 6-11. They actually overperformed that.
I predicted 5-12.
Yeah,
I predicted 5 wins last year. I was getting shit for it, but it's like I did not think that this would be a team with a winning record.
Yeah. So, like, we're trying to tell you guys the truth, and, like, sometimes we're probably going to end up too low, and sometimes we're going to end up too high. Maybe occasionally we'll get it right, but, we're trying to communicate to you what the national media probably isn't, because they're just not that invested in the Falcons. Like, I know, some people do enjoy the Falcons or think what they're doing is interesting. I think CBS is one of those sites that has some analysts that are, like, intrigued by the Falcons. I know around the NFL, some of those analysts on that show do really enjoy the idea of the Falcons or think they'll be fun. Like Greg Rosenthal has always, I think he was the one that coined the, like, oh, the Falcons are frisky sort of phrase last year. So, like, there are definitely some analysts that are seeing what the Falcons are doing, and they're like, oh, this is interesting, that this could be something here. So, we're trying to also do that. Obviously, if you're here, you care pretty much about the Falcons because that's pretty much the only team we talk about in detail. But let me read off some of these other moves. The other cuts: linebacker David Aneni, who was on the show. So shout out to David. Hope that he catches on elsewhere. I was pretty disappointed. I was hoping to see him in training camp and catch up, and hope that he'd have a chance to compete. But they're probably doing him a favor, honestly, because it was going to be really, really hard to make this team at edge with all the moves that they've made. So hopefully he can catch on elsewhere. Cornerback Javelin Guidry, who I actually thought would have a better shot at potentially making the roster because of his special teams ability. But again, they did add a cornerback in the draft, and they traded for Jeff Okudah. So, writing maybe was on the wall there. They also cut last year's undrafted free agent sort of holdover and Matt Hankins, who did stick around on the practice squad last year. And then also another practice squad guy from last year, safety Dylan Mabin, wide receiver Rashawn Henry, who was a futures signing this offseason. And then tight end fullback John Rain, who was mostly playing fullback in camp. He's someone that stuck around for a few years, so I was sort of surprised that they elected to move on from him. Any of those guys sort of stand out to you, Adnan?
Just John Rain, to be honest.
It seemed like they really liked him. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I get it. Like, with that tight end room is going to be a bit crowded this season. Of course, you have Pitts. You traded for John, who you even have Fitzpatrick, from who you drafted last year in the 6th round, as there to compete for that blocking role. So I mean, I sort of get it, but I'm a little shocked that he didn't make it to camp. But no, It's like those are. I don't want to call them marginal names because that feels very disrespectful, and I don't want to disrespect any of those guys. But those aren't really massive needle movers, so to speak.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I was sort of surprised by John Rain, but they did bring in another fullback in Clint Rakovich to compete. So it seems like they maybe like what they saw from Rakovich a little bit more. And John Rain is just measurables and like RAS wise was always going to have a really tough time. I mean, I think his RAS was like really, really bad, and he was like a 6'1" tight end. So that's why they were trying to make him a fullback. Definitely someone who was interesting. Didn't really get a ton of pop in the preseason, but had managed to stick around in the practice squad for a couple of years. So, but yeah, otherwise, the guys and BJ Baylor, the running back, he was waived injured, so he may end up on IR or whatever, or they may do like an injury settlement with him. But that means he was injured. It wasn't like a cut for performance related reasons. So we'll see if he does make a return at some point.
And just speaking of fullbacks, Keith Smith also just got re-signed this offseason.
Yeah, they still have Keith Smith. Yeah. He's still the favorite, obviously, but and then on the signings end, 8 signings come in. Linebacker Andre Smith Jr., who was a special teamer for the Titans for a few years and a reserve linebacker. Wide receiver Slade Bolden, who has a great name, was a pretty good receiver over at Alabama. Hasn't really caught on in the NFL yet. Defensive back Natrone Brooks, who I think is a UDFA this year, and defensive back Clifford Chapman, a 6'5" cornerback, who I don't know if they're going to play him as safety. They listed him as defensive back, so he's kind of interesting. And then the XFL signings: offensive tackle Barry Wesley, safety Lucas Dennis, who was one of the best safeties in the XFL, and then nose tackle LaCale London. To sort of add some depth to that nose tackle competition. So yeah, any of those guys sort of interest you at all, Adnan? I've seen Andre Smith for sure, and I remember Slade Bolden from college football, but I didn't really watch XFL a ton this year.
Well, I do want to say that the Falcons sign more XFL guys than anyone else. Like, the Falcons are doing their due diligence on these, other football leagues, which is actually very promising, very encouraging, because you never know, like, if any of these guys from the XFL, from the CFL, like, end up being a solid depth guy that makes the roster, that's, you've given yourself a little bit of an advantage over the other teams that aren't really doing this, this is the NFL we're talking about, where any little bit, matters a lot, because everyone is competing with very similar resources, more or less, and anything extra you can gain to get ahead of other teams is, especially because of your own due diligence, is so important. Case in point, I think last year they went to the CFL and they got our guy D. Alford, and D. Alford was, you know, a, he had a hell of a training camp and he had a hell of a preseason. I think he was our guy during the preseason while we were doing play by play, and he ended up making the roster. And he's probably going to be on the roster again this year, and that's good cornerback depth. I'm interested in, sort of intrigued by both of these XFL guys. Both of them came from St. Louis. More so Lucas Dennis, the safety from the Battlehawks.
Mhm.
I see he had 2 picks in 7 games. He had 7 interceptions in 12 games in his junior year at Boston College. This was back in 2017. He's 26 years old. Didn't really make it in the NFL. I think he was a training camp invite with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But he seems to be a bit of a ball hawk. I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh yeah, I've watched extensive Lucas Dennis film. I'm
Been
sorry,
grinding.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been grinding that off-season film. Lakeal London is another dude that actually sort of quote unquote made the NFL. He made Chicago's roster for a couple of years. So
Yeah.
um, he's a very he seems to be a very quick nose tackle. He's 6'5", 316, so he's not really, massively bogged down. But yeah, I mean, those would probably be the 2 names. It would be really cool to have like one of these XFL guys just, make the roster. But Dennis sort of makes the most sense because this team does need some depth at safety, and
Yeah.
I do like ball hawking ability.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. Yeah, I mean, I think Lucas Dennis is interesting, and until they signed like a couple of, like they brought in Trey Flowers. I don't know if they'll technically list him as a safety or a corner. I think when they signed him, they announced him as a corner, but he's someone that may play a quasi safety spot. And they drafted DeMarco Helms, but that there is potentially opportunity for someone to win like a 5th safety spot if they or compete for a 4th safety spot if they do keep 5 safeties. So definitely opportunity for like Lucas Dennis there. Most of these guys realistically are competing for the practice squad, but I do think there's like realistic paths for those guys to make it. Like Lakeal London, the Falcons are going to keep a nose tackle on the squad to back up Eddie Goldman. So, Lakeal London, all he has to do is get past Timmy Horn from last year, who the Falcons definitely liked him and they kept him around all season essentially. But
I never forget that Timmy Horn fumble recovery against the Lions in week 3 of the preseason last year. That's the deep cut. Hey, that's what set up that Desmond Ridder game winner to Jared Bernhardt.
That's right. That was the best play of the entire preseason. So we would definitely enjoyed talking about that. But
I'm not gonna lie, I feel like this crowd of our viewers who are watching right now are the only people that would get that reference.
Probably,
if I like, imagine you're just in a group of your friends and you're just like mentioning, what Timmy Horn did in the 4th quarter of the 3rd preseason game. Oh,
yeah.
This is a great segue to remind you guys that we will be doing preseason play-by-play this season again,
Yes.
as we have the past few years, because the preseason schedule just came out. So yeah, check out when those preseason are. Yeah, and we will. I feel like we do a pretty good job of that. Our nice play-by-play and analyst chops. Trying to do our best, Kevin Harlan and Tony Romo, or name your favorite analyst
in the booth. Yeah, we just go up there, and it'd be cool if we could go to the actual games. So Falcons hit us up, we'll definitely do it. But yeah. We could go to cover it, but I'm probably not going to fly down there for preseason. To be honest.
Look, no offense.
No offense.
We do a better job than the TV guys. I'm not.
Yeah. Sometimes for sure. We have some practice now. The first time it was a little more exciting, but now we've done it a few times. We've got it all under our belt. So, that was the big signings. There was also the quarterback Austin Oon or whatever, or Austin Ayoun. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's like On, maybe Austin On. I guess he was a former pitcher, uh, who like went to the minor leagues for a few years and then played football. After that didn't work out, so he's like a 29-year-old former pitcher quarterback. Um, so I'm not, I mean, it's like interesting. He's probably competing for the practice squad quarterback spot with Woodside, Toledo legend. But yeah, not expecting a ton of noise there. But yeah, in terms of those guys, like Andre Smith, I think you may even already have a leg up for the roster. I think he's a guy that has played a lot of special teams and has played some defense too. I think he's a solid option there. So right now, like if they were going to keep he might even be the fourth linebacker right now on paper. So I think he's definitely got a good shot. I mentioned Lucas Dennis. And then like at wide receiver, I mean, honestly, like Slade Bolden, the fifth wide receiver spot is basically, or six if they keep six, like could be anyone. Like it's completely wide open. So there's always an opportunity for a wide receiver on this team, which could be good or bad depending.
Every year it's the most exciting position, like every single year without fail.
Yeah. So there's plenty of opportunity there. But yeah, I mean, I think more or less, this is going to be the training camp roster, at least going in. I know, yeah, I think there were some like small reports coming out of like rookie minicamp. I mean, obviously it's mostly rookies in UDFA, so we don't get to see a ton of the actual Falcons at that point. But I know like Torrey McElhaney was very complimentary of Zach Harrison, and like how big he is, which is yes, he absolutely is. George Costanza, is Felipe Franks still on the roster? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Felipe Franks.
I know people were very upset about that.
Felipe Franks will survive a nuclear catastrophe, and he will come out of the rubble with a Falcons jersey on him.
Yeah, somehow, some way, he will find a way.
Arthur Smith is just this is the long game for Arthur Smith. He wants Felipe Franks for that one gadget play at the end of whatever. And this will be a 4 or 5 season long project just for that one play. And who knows? Maybe it'll be worth it. Maybe it'll win us a playoff game. Yeah,
I don't know if it's like he wants him to be the third emergency quarterback or something. I don't know if it's something like that. So this is why we need that third. If they got that third quarterback rule, then maybe that would eliminate the need for that, but it doesn't seem like that's going to pass this year.
Remember when we were running exclusive triple option in one of those preseason games?
I enjoyed that, actually. That was more fun than the rest of the series for a while. That was actually pretty interesting. But yeah, no, it shouldn't be a big thing. But yeah, I mean, you look up and down the roster. We wide receiver probably still a weak point, right? I wonder, obviously we've talked about hashtag Corey Davis watch quite a bit. But they did bring in quite a few guys there recently, right? Like Penny Hart got signed.
Georgia State legend.
Yep, Georgia State legend. Slade Bolden, we just mentioned. They did bring in quite a few UDFAs there as well, with Justin Marshall, who I know a lot of people on here know about. Also Xavier Malone, who's like a speed guy. And then Keelan Harris as well. But they're that 5th or 6th, if they keep 6 wide receiver spots, are basically wide open. I think it's Drake, London, obviously, Mac Hollins, Scotty Miller, Kadero Hodge. It's 4. And then after that, it could be any of those guys. I mean, who are you we haven't really seen a lot of these guys play, except for maybe Penny Hart and he played quite a bit for the Seahawks. But Jared Bernhardt's here too. Who are you super early? You see all these names. Anyone that you're sort of planting your flag early for?
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely. I planted my flag on Penny Hart for sure.
Georgia State legend.
Yeah, that's my alma mater.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I finished my undergrad and my master's degree at Georgia State. We don't get many. We don't get many NFL players. We have Will Lutz, but he plays for the Saints, which sucks. So I can't even root for him. Yeah. But definitely let's go Penny Hart on this one. He was really good at GSU. He didn't really have a strong quarterback play, but he is someone that sort of elevated the offense as much as he could. And I think he had a really good pro day. But yeah, it's like yeah, he has some experience. I think it does help. He has some experience with the Seahawks. Nothing extensive, but I definitely that's who I'm biasly rooting for that fifth wide receiver spot. And I continue I continue to have a soft spot for Jared Bernhardt. I
Yeah.
hate that he had that injury last season because he did a hell of a job last preseason. Like you can tell he had some real chemistry with Ritter for a little bit there, because it wasn't just that play. It was that play against the Lions which opened it up, and then I think against the Jets, Bernhardt really Ritter really started trusting him a bit more. So I don't know if that'll play into it, but Bernhardt has a bit of a leg up because he's been in the system for a year. He knows, he should know all of the playbook by now, and he should have that little bit of chemistry with the Ritter, especially probably in practice. They were both on the second team, so we'll see how that plays out. It's nothing. It's not a huge lead, but I would say Bernhardt right now should be the favorite, logically. But obviously, like, until training camp begins and until we actually start seeing these guys on the field, we can only speculate.
Yeah.
I'm frozen.
Yeah, your video is, but I can still hear you just fine. It's just funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just looked. Holy crap, I'm
It's
frozen.
hilarious.
No,
It's hilarious. It's just like in the perfect pose too. It's great.
yeah, that's not a flattering picture of me at
It's
all.
just
Oh
like,
my God.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Daniel Flick froze on the live show, and he made that his like Twitter background. So uh, it was a good shot. But
yeah, look, guys, I promise I do not have my like arm behind. I don't look very like. It
just
is
showing
a
off
hell
the
of,
gun show again. Yeah.
it is a hell of a pose. I'm not gonna lie.
It's pretty good. I'm enjoying that actually. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a lot of shows to talk about each of these positions. We're probably gonna do some breakdowns and stuff as we go forward, and we'll have OTAs and stuff to talk about too. But early on,
The chat's talking about Frank Darby. I'm
yes,
sorry. I think that ship is sailed, guys. I'm sorry.
he's still here, man. Like, give him credit.
He's still
I think
here.
everyone just loves him. Like, apparently he's just really fun. So I don't know if that's enough at this point to keep him around, but that has definitely helped him stick on the practice squad at least.
Okay, will this unfreeze? Holy crap!
Yeah,
All
it
right,
did.
there.
Fix it. Yeah.
All I needed to do was turn off my camera and turn it back on.
Yep. Oh, the technology. But yeah, I mean, I think I had Bernhardt making it in my last one. That was before the Penny Hart and Slade Bolden and all that. I mean, I still think Bernhardt has a pretty good shot if they're looking for more of that like slot specialist for that last spot. I don't really know how good on special teams Bernhardt would be. That's really probably going to be the kicker for that. Like, a lot of people think those final receiver spots are about like receiving ability, and like to some extent, obviously they are. Like, you do have to check a box there, but a lot of times those fifth and sixth wide receiver spots are for special teams players. So that's going to be a big part of it.
Although, in fairness, Hodge is there as a special.
Yeah,
teams
exactly. So he's sort of their
specialist.
like specialist guy. Yeah.
So I think you can sort of like, because you have Hodge, who is your number 4 wide receiver, being such a good gunner, and that's statistically he had 9 tackles on special teams last year that led the team.
Yep.
I think you can sort of look and give yourself, lean a little bit more toward that pure receiving ability. Obviously, you still need him to be a good special teams player, but I don't know. Bernhardt was an okay gunner, like, as far as from what I saw in training camp last year, as well. So, they had that little gunner drill off to the side on the last day that I was there, and I think he had a really good rep. But yeah, you are right. Special teams is going to be very important, and this team has really prioritized special teams more than any other regime that I've ever seen, which is a nice change of pace. But yeah, like all we can do is speculate. Remember last year? Remember how we thought Auden Tate was going to be like the guy last year after we signed him? Like, has that experience with the bank. Maybe he'll be the number 3 wide receiver. We spent so much of the show talking about Auden Tate. Then he comes out in training camp, looks like the slowest guy on the field. Like, he's one of the biggest wide receivers out there, but he just looks a step slower than everyone else. I think he made I think he was cut before the second preseason game. He didn't even make the last wave of cuts.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. But yeah, I mean, it didn't work out, unfortunately for him. But yeah, this year it's like that. I think they went in a different direction, obviously, at receiver, and it's like what's Brian Edwards didn't end up doing anything either, which was pretty surprising.
And they traded a pick for him.
Yeah, so you never really know what you're gonna get there. I certainly like some of these players. I like Xavier Malone, that UDFA signing. I think he's really interesting. I think he's a guy that could make some noise.
That's the guy from Buffalo, right?
No, that's Justin Marshall. Xavier Malone's from Henderson State. Just Google Xavier Malone on YouTube and watch his like highlight reel. It's really funny. I think he's reported to run in the 4.2s.
Yeah. I know exactly.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's
but his,
yeah.
We
didn't get
5'7".
He's the guy now. Yeah. The guy who can take the top off the defense. Yeah, I got him confused. Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a really good one because
his yards after catch were actually pretty good. Like I was surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what this receiving core. That's the only thing that this receiving core is really missing right now. That guy, and I know that everyone wants to shit on the wide receivers. Kyle Pitts is going to be your wide receiver one. I promise you, Kyle Pitts will line up as the X more than he does as a traditional tight end this season. And Drake London's your wide receiver one, but he's actually your wide receiver two. As a result. But yeah, this receiving core does need that guy who can really get behind the defense. It's the Demir Bird role from last year.
Yeah, and they got Scotty Miller too, who's fast, is very fast. I think he's like 4.3 type of guy. So they've got some options there. And again, for this team, wide receiver is just sort of de-emphasized. So it's not as important as it is for some teams. But, the Falcons are going to have to prove that works before anyone starts taking it seriously. Because right now everyone's like, oh, well, they don't have any receivers. So, this offense is not going to be able to pass the ball at all. So it's sort of up to them to prove that they can, right? That they don't need all those wide receivers, that they can have tight ends and have whatever. So, it'll be interesting to see how they do it, right? How it comes together. This is going to be a really fun camp, of course, to watch. We've still got a ways to go until we get there, guys, but we'll be here. We'll be here to shepherd you through the dead period. We're probably going to do a schedule show next week, assuming we don't get any crazy news to derail that. So we'll actually talk about the schedule release because I know you were out of town for that. But yeah, it'll be an interesting couple of months here. We're going to kick off the training camp fundraiser soon and get going on that stuff and sort of, get you guys prepped, probably starting in July for training camp with a lot of training camp coverage. And we'll still have podcasts going. We'll have some guests coming on to talk about, the Falcons offseason, how everything's come together, what we sort of think about the roster going into camp, all those fun topics. Before we do, though, want to thank my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way for his contributions tonight. Adnan, anything you're working on you'd like to plug?
A couple of things. The main thing that I would love to plug right now is, and this went a couple of weeks ago, but if you haven't checked it out, please check out my article talking about the Falcons run game. And I went in serious depth, about how the NFL is sort of moving away from the run game and how the Falcons are very much embracing it. It's called "While the NFL Moves Away from the Run, the Falcons are doubling down on making it their identity." I think I wrote it before. I wrote it after our last show, so I didn't really have a chance to plug it last week. But it has a lot of really good information in there. I was really buzzed out on caffeine, which I had not had in days before, so I had no tolerance to it. So I was drinking a coffee while writing it, and I was super hyped
just
up,
cranking it out. Yeah.
Well, I was cranking out so much, so many stats, and at one point I went back through every single draft class going back to 1960, for one of the reasons for the article. So yeah, just check that out. It has a lot of really good information. It was a lot of painstaking research, a lot of painstaking writing, but I think it has a lot of good information in it. Just talking about what the Falcons may do moving forward, regarding the run game, and just sort of looking at the way the run game has been devalued as a whole in the NFL, and how the Falcons are trying to take advantage of that. And the other article that I recently wrote that went a couple days ago is the rest breakdown for the Falcons in 2023, basically looking at the specific weeks when the Falcons will have more of a rest advantage against the opponent versus when the opponent will have more of a rest advantage. This is my second year writing that one, so I'm trying to make it into a tradition of just always, going a bit deeper and reading a bit more between the lines regarding the schedule itself. After the schedule gets released. So, definitely check that one out. There's some good information in there, but if you have to read one, then definitely read the running one instead.
Yeah. Definitely check that article out, guys. It's got a lot of work pulled into it. That's a definite Adnan banger alert for those that enjoy that. And there's definitely been like a lot. I haven't even gotten caught up on everything. I definitely read Adnan's, but I think like Aaron Freeman had something about Ritter. I know there was like a 2-part Tyler Algier interview that Alan Stirk did. So there's all kinds of great content on there. I feel like, we probably should have spread that out a little bit, maybe a little bit more. But it's okay. It's okay. You can always go back and read it.
All of that went within like a week. Like, we didn't plan that out a lot at all.
No,
it's like
just
May.
like
it's like
banger, and then like nothing for 2 months now. So.
Yeah, like we could have easily spread that out over like the next month and just given it room to breathe. But
just unleashed upon everyone. But it's good stuff, guys. So definitely check that out. Definitely like and subscribe if you're watching us here on YouTube. Really appreciate that. That stuff helps us out a lot. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're listening on the podcast audio, check out the community Discord server, link to which is in the show description. And if you're interested in supporting the show, hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, for all those exclusive perks like ad-free episodes, as well as exclusive Q&A sessions. We did our live patron mock draft. Keep that going. We'll also have some patron events likely throughout the summer, and of course our patron fantasy leagues, which we filled up 2 last year, so I wonder if we'll get to 3 this year. Well, we'll see how that goes, but those are a lot of fun. So if you want to partake in that, you can get involved right now. So patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, Falcoholic Live, guys. I gotta slow those last couple words down there. It's I'm rusty not doing the show for like a week or two. So, but yeah, guys, you can follow me, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin. Thanks again for tuning in to the Falcoholic Live tonight. The show is presented, of course, by BetOnline.ag. Yeah, guys, really appreciate everyone for hanging out, all 100 plus of you, as we enter the dead period. But we'll keep it interesting. We'll keep the topics and the Falcons talk flowing all through the summer until we finally reach the oasis that is training camp. But until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. We will talk to you next time on the Falcons.